If you haven't watched any videos about the toys that made us, if you haven't watched the programme at all, well, The Toys That Made Us is a documentary series on Netflix that takes a look in each episode at a single major toy franchise. In season 1, which was released in December, they took a look at each and on their over the 4 episodes at Star Wars, Barbie, He-Man, and G.I. Joe. In this was now officially being called Season 2, which was released on May 25th, they looked at Star Trek, Transformers, Lego, and Hello Kitty. I'm going to go through Season 2 as I did with a video a few weeks ago. I went through Season 1, and now having had the chance to watch Season 2, I want to go through those. So the first episode is Star Trek. The title of this programme really should have been called Missed Opportunity. Star Trek is a huge science fiction franchise. It's one of the biggest in the world, absolutely. I don't know how financially it kind of stocks up against the likes of Star Wars, but there's been lots of different generations or kind of versions of Star Trek, different generations, if you will, of Star Trek. From the original series, there's The Next Generation, there's Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, and all, of course, the movies from the original crew to the Next Generation films to the, I believe they call it the Kevlar timeline with, I think it's Chris Pine as Captain Kirk, and apparently more movies from that cast are coming out within the next few years. So Star Trek is a huge scope. There's a huge scope in Star Trek. When it comes to missed opportunities in this programme, you see how the license to make Star Trek toys were switched from company to company with varying success. Some of the likenesses and the figures some are more successful than others. Same with any toys and accessories. Things like the phasers some of them are very much like Star Trek phasers eventually. Others, they're just more general like space toys, which leads us to lead to me mentioning what we see in this program which is what we saw in the Star Wars episode, which is something called sticker slapping, where they take a product that's not particularly made for that toy franchise and stick that toy franchise's logo, in this case the Star Trek logo or Star Trek likenesses, on the product. So they make a general spaceman shooting arcade thing, and they stick Star Trek stuff on it and try and call it a Star Trek product, which has been going on for many decades. Star Trek episode, I think you see a lot, and it's up to people themselves to judge where they see how Star Trek failed as a toy franchise. I mean, like I said, there's so many iterations, so many versions and multiverses and different multiple universes that have appeared in Star Trek programs, movies, even there's some books and audio books, and there's so many stories that have been told, and different, like a normal science fiction franchise, there's so many different ways, different story arcs, different situations anyway, that have been told through the years. And it's just with all those possibilities, with all those from the captains like Janeway and Sisko, Kirk and Picard, and everything, it could have been really, it should have been really a lot bigger in the toy world than it wasn't. Because you look at, especially as a Star Trek fan, you watch this episode and you have to grit your teeth if you're a real Star Trek fan and see how they really failed to grasp the mark with so much scope, with so much variety in the Star Trek universe. With again all these series, they completely missed the mark with Star Trek. One of the main points, I think, that reason why Star Trek toys missed, because a few of the licensees or license companies to make that got the rights to make Star Trek they went after collectors. That seems to be the general case nowadays, at least from the episode I can gather. They make a limited run of, say, Captain Picard as Locutus of Borg, which is, of course, one of the famous Star Trek storylines where Captain Picard is abducted by the Borg and becomes one of them. Pretty much does, actually, for a while. I think it was a cliffhanger for one of the Next Generation seasons. Certainly, it's a major thing, always remembered, of course. And they would make a limited run of, say, 3,000 figures. So they're deliberately going after the collector's market. So Star Trek wasn't hugely successful in toiling, and I think this is a great opportunity to watch a toy franchise basically miss the mark, I think. The next episode, Transformers. Now, Transformers is more... The story of Transformers is really about how Hasbro, an American company, just to explain coming up, to take the toys of... two toys of Takara Tomy, a Japanese toy company who were Diaclone and Microman, and they would take these two almost separate but similar toy lines and they Americanise them, and actually you see in this episode how it's Hasbro and those involved in Hasbro that actually came up with that. This might surprise some people. I'd heard it before, a few of the bits of a couple of these programs before, but it was actually Hasbro, the company that came up, or really those working with the companies. If you watch the opening few minutes, you'll understand what I mean by that, of the Transformers episode. How it's Hasbro that really comes up with the whole story about Cybertron, the Autobots and Decepticons battling, and it's a kind of ecological story to it, using up the resources in their planet and coming to Earth and battling and everything like that. It's amusing how much really Transformers was pretty much quite a lot created by Hasbro, taking these two lines of Diaclone and Microman toy lines and kind of merging them together to make what we know as Transformers. Like I said, adding the backstories, even naming them, naming Megatron and Optimus Prime and Starscream and lots of just. And see also, of course, the different versions of Transformers later on in the episode, like the dinosaurs, which I wasn't too much of a fan of. The different versions of Transformers. You see how also they try and refresh the brand of Transformers. One of the things I will say about the Transformers episode as well, I don't know. Obviously, I think it's Bandai that is. I think they might still be behind Power Rangers. I'm not sure about the ownership of companies, but you see very similar. These two lines, Diaclone and Microman. The robots that Transformers are based on are very, very similar to kind of the Power Rangers things. Obviously, we see especially the early series of Power Rangers, which I don't know whether they'll do an episode about Power Rangers, but if they do, I would love to see how similar or what the kind of connection, if there is any, between Power Rangers, especially things like the Zords. You see in this episode a few of the figures clicking together to make a bigger machine, kind of like the Zords and Megazords that Power Rangers used. I would actually like to hear whether there's any similarity or similar kind of connection with what ended up being Power Rangers. Because I know a lot of, if I think I'm right in that, especially the early series of Power Rangers, a lot the stuff they used was actually library footage from an old Japanese TV show. The guys in suits, and the monsters. Some of that was old footage from another show, I believe. That's what I have heard, but I'm not entirely sure whether it is absolutely correct. But Transformers, it's a good episode. Obviously it's still very popular with the Michael Bay films, which you see a little bit of the footage of. It doesn't concentrate too much on the films, thankfully. It concentrates on the creation, and it's a really good story of how Transformers came about. And again, the lifespan innovation, like every episode, it talks about the innovation, how it comes about, and especially a little bit about also near the start of the episode about how Japan's economy was helped by making toys after World War II. We hear all about that as well, which is great. So Transformers, very good episode, one I look forward to. I don't think at this point it is good. actually inside the story of Transformers. We'll see where it goes in these movies. I know there's a Bumblebee spin-off coming up. I'm not sure entirely sure how good that'll be. But the next episode is Lego. Now this is there's quite a few stories running through the Playwell program. It's not actually called Playwell, but that's what Lego means. It's two words, two words that make up Lego. Basically, they mean play well. It means play with your imagination. You can be, play as anything if you want, like being cops and robbers, or superheroes and villains, whatever it is. You hear about the story of this family-owned Danish company. You hear about their involvement many decades ago. Because like any toy company that was around about the same time as Lego, or is still around at a kind of similar age, pretty much a lot of the toy companies at some point in some way will be involved, as Lego were, with wooden toys. And we hear about how the company struggled, and how it moved into plastics, and created and innovated the Lego bricks, and how also actually the tubes that are an intricate part of Lego not only changed the fortunes of the company, but really changed how the Lego brick and how the Lego system that we hear a lot about in this episode, how it just absolutely it just changed pretty much overnight. The use of bricks, because the Lego bricks you could just used to stack them up one on each other, almost like I think you call it dry stone walling. An old teacher of mine used to do that at college, but it's like just set them on top of each other. You can connect them, interconnect them, and make different models, helicopters. You hear also about how the Lego system affected making things like castles, and how they wanted to keep it kind of peacetime or peace attitude toys, and how they're really against making castles, how they were really against making how the colour scheme of castles and everything like that, when they eventually did make them, eventually played into that, how the Lego system affects everything they've done and will do, basically. The thing that you hear is about, this was a huge thing actually when I was at school, and that is they came out with a few years ago, I don't know how much it's around still, but they came out with these structures that you could build with Lego, connect it to a computer, you could have it do different tasks, so move in different patterns, go from one position to another, it could carry something or carry out a simple task, like picking something up. This was a huge thing when I was at school. Lego really put a lot of time, money, publicity into this. So it went all around the schools. It was really a huge thing for a couple of years. There was lots of different competitions. Don't know whether any of that kind of exists nowadays. But you see, really ironically, in Lego, one of the most basic, really toys. When it comes to what the toy actually is, it's amazing. That is the episode where you see kind of, in some way fighting against, but in some way embracing modern technology as a toy, and trying to keep their place in the toy world. And you hear all about it. There's actually, also I noticed that earlier on Netflix, so I'll maybe pause because I want to do this video today, and I want to upload it by the end of today. But there is actually, I've seen just added a documentary. I think it's The House That Lego Built. I think it's called that. Search Lego and you'll find it. I'm sure LEGO. You'll find it. It's about the house. I believe it's the building that they're actually in the midst of putting together when this episode was recorded. It's I've not watched it yet. I'm going to watch the Lego documentary later on, but probably tomorrow night actually. But I want to check that one out, and I also recommend something at the end of another one at the end of this video, another documentary. But I'll get to that in a moment. The final episode. Oh no! Actually, before I move on to the final episode of the series, I want to say actually, the last point I want to make about Lego is how this is the story of how a product can be absolutely perfect. They don't need to mess with the bricks. The bricks are being there. The bricks are still successful. It's the really, I think, the best scenario, best kind of. It's the best example for me of all the toys that you could pick to have been featured or will be featured on this toys that made us series or seasons. I think it's the perfect example of if it isn't broke, don't try and fix it, because the Lego brick is perfect. It works as it is. You can vary the size of it, but really what they've got there, it's the best example of having a product as good or as perfect as it can be. It's absolutely right there, and then it's right there. It's a really good episode. Lots of kids. How many kids played with Lego when they were a kid? I know there's been a lot of imitations of Lego through the years, but certainly it's pretty much the story of how they come to a pretty much a perfect product, because it also there's various shapes and different pieces that you could use for, say, hoods of cars and everything like that. But where the really the method, the Lego system, and the bricks that they have, absolutely perfect. I mean, I was at the huge store in New York, teaming with people, and that was just a couple of years, 2 years ago, almost. Teaming with people buying out the wazoo, really long lines in the store, and I'm not just saying that. It was hugely busy. Bricks perfect as could be. I think that is the greatest. That Lego is really the greatest example. As I was saying, I'm long way around to say it, but I think it's actually the great example of getting your product absolutely perfect. The last episode is Hello Kitty. Don't have a huge amount to say about this episode. It's really more about the creation, obviously, of the Hello Kitty character, Miss Kitty, and really how their foray, was it, if I can, the scenario company that created it, how just it can it's really a look at how a toy phenomenon can capture people's imaginations, how opening a couple of stores in the United States got a few people interested, which meant word spread. More people got interested. People like Paris Hilton, who appears in the episode, not a fan of hers really at all. It really is the story of how just one character, if you get that character right enough to interest quite a few people, you have those right mixture of ingredients, that right character, the right look. It could just become a global phenomenon. The Hello Kitty episode is more about charting how Miss Kitty became a global phenomenon. There's lots of rumours, lots of things about about Hello Kitty character. About whether she's a cosplayer because she gets a cat at one point. She's also got a boyfriend. There's lots of different suggestions about how she is, and apparently, it turns out she's actually English. She's I don't know, maybe a cosplayer that's a fan of Japanese culture, or maybe she's maybe he's got Japanese ancestry or Japanese family, or I don't know. There's lots of different rumours about it, but Hello Kitty is really a look at how a toy can become a huge global phenomenon. The Hello Kitty episode really did interest me a lot. I kind of watched it, but kind of didn't, so not too much huge amount to say about it. But I'm going to go back and watch it again. Also, I said I was going to talk about. Recommend another Netflix show. That Lego one, I definitely haven't checked out yet, but that looks good. But also the one that I want to recommend is called Making Fun: The Story of Funko. Funko is the vinyl figure or vinyl toy. I'm not sure how you describe it. I don't own one, but it's those vinyl figure things that people have gone crazy over the last few years. You hear how the story of the company, how a few friends get together, start to make bobbleheads, get different licenses from different like Marvel and different mascots, and how they how they get the licenses, how they transform, eventually go into vinyl figures. It's about an hour and a half, but it's really good. Check it out if you can. But certainly the season 2 I mostly enjoyed all the toys that made us. They're already at it making season 3, so although we don't know which ones what they're going to cover in season 3, certainly keep an eye out for that information, and hopefully we'll have that soon. Hopefully they will confirm it eventually.